Hey everyone, thanks for joining me. I'm just going to take a couple minutes for people to join on, just get situated in the room. I'm also multitasking Zoom and Instagram Live, so that's fun. Okay, so today we're going to have a special guest, Elizabeth. Her name's Elizabeth Driscoll, and I apologize if I mispronounce that. She is a psychotherapist, and we're just going to be talking a little bit about mental health and how people are kind of dealing with that in this pandemic during quarantine. So we just kind of want to get a little bit of her advice, and maybe she could provide a couple tools and resources and how to balance and sustain our emotional and mental health. Hi, everybody. Hi, Maroon. So I'm going to join her on the line. Hi. Let me see. I think you're muted. There we go. How are you?
Hey. Good. How are you?
I'm doing pretty good. Just trying to situate both the live and the Zoom.
I don't know how you're juggling it because, generally just doing the Zoom is enough for me. So I'm very impressed that you got all these platforms going.
Right. It's fun. All right. So I was just telling everybody, introducing you, Elizabeth. Maybe you can tell them a little bit about yourself and what you do.
Sure. So I'm a psychotherapist in private practice, and I practice in Boulder, Colorado. And I've been in private practice now for about 2 years. And otherwise, outside of that, I serve on couple of nonprofits, and one of the ones that are really dear to my heart is the International Center for Mental Health and Human Rights. And we offer services, essentially contemplative, mindfulness-based programming for people who at times may not be able to have those services. So we offer it to people who, for instance, work on the front lines of a humanitarian aid crisis. And but we also, it's kind of robust in that you're just working with the nervous system.
Mm-hmm.
And so we go back to the basics in that way, and offer that also to healthcare professionals across the nation, and then use that funding for that programming to offer it to others who may not normally have access to those resources. So that's one of my passion projects, as well as just being a mindfulness-based psychotherapist. And
That's amazing.
Yeah.
That's an amazing contribution to the community as well. Obviously, right now we are in a major pandemic, and I'm sure you've noticed. I don't know if you've had more clients come to you in this time. What are you noticing with people? Are they struggling more in this time with their mental, emotional health, or is it the same? What is your observation?
Yeah. Personally, I think things are amplified,
Mm-hmm.
and I definitely see that with my clients. We were talking a bit before about, what sorts of topics we would go over. And I think everything is heightened, and yet everyone's experience is so unique in this. And meaning, like, there's some people without work. There's some people who are continuing to work and have a lot of stress there and feel like, I need to be working as hard as I can to keep this job that I do have, and that has its own stress.
Mm-hmm.
I think, of course, being without work and having to renegotiate your life in that way is a total, crisis moment. Um, and yeah, it's our whole society, the way that we function has been flipped drastically.
Mm-hmm.
So yeah, I think it does have an impact. And at the end of the day, some of the things that we're concerned about are still like reminiscent of of things that we were concerned about before. So that fight that we were having with, our partner or, family member, or, some drama that we're having in another relationship, those are still alive as well.
Mm-hmm.
And sometimes, at the forefront of it, even in the midst of the pandemic. So yeah, I think stress is up, and I'm definitely not hurting for work at this time. I'm very, very busy, and I think for a lot of healthcare workers, it's figuring out how to take care of ourselves, manage ourselves the best we can, and be the, you know, of of good service. And also, we're very grateful to be having work, but also not overextend ourselves and, you know, hurt our health or not do really good work for other people.
Definitely. And trying to maintain ways to ground ourselves, you know,
Totally.
just like you said, so we could be a vessel to other people. What are some techniques and tools would you kind of suggest to people struggling with mental and emotional health in this time?
In a lot of ways, going back to the basics of our taking care of our nervous system is always a good way um, to be going through the situation of like a more of a health crisis or more of an emotional one. And that would be, first of all, building some relationship, having some practice and discipline to be tracking that for yourself, to be checking in with yourself. Where am I at on a scale of 0 to 10 on a somewhat regular basis? If I'm super stressed, if I'm at like an 8, 9, 10 often, okay, that's a good information that I need to be, doing things to help me settle more so. Um, so yeah, just having some sort of regular check-ins with yourself, knowing yourself. Um, and then a simple one is just, of course, using the breath, right?
Yes,
So,
yes.
um, and there's so many different ways to do that, right? There's so many different breath work techniques. You could probably go to a school and have a whole program just on breath work at this point. And there's a reason for that because it's so incredibly powerful. And I think if we overcomplicate it, it might feel overwhelming to people and they'll just throw up their hands and walk away from it.
Mm.
And so, some of the ones that I go to often are extending your breath and doing belly breathing.
Mm.
So we could even practice that right now if you want to.
Yeah, let's do it.
Okay.
I don't think I've practiced belly breathing before. I've taken attempts to breathe through my lower chakras all the way up and then back down again, and just the inhale and the exhale, being mindful of that. But I'm interested to learn this belly breathing.
Okay. Well, first we'll do a little extra exercise to notice where our breath is coming from. So you're going to start with one hand and put it on your chest. Put in your other hand and put it on your belly. You can take a breath. So where did you notice what did you notice in your body? What part of your body moved, if any?
I definitely noticed a tension in my heart. I was able to, that stood out more. I was able to listen and feel
Mm,
that area.
yeah. And I know you were saying too before you came in, you're
Mhm.
juggling so much, right? And like again like just overwhelmed by the idea of doing one platform. You have several platforms going on, and then you have your baby, right?
Yeah.
So you're rushing into this, making it on time, and so like that's where that sort of like, okay, need to take care of business, need to make sure,
Yeah.
um, you know, our parasympathetic and sympathetic nervous systems,
Yeah.
right?
Try to
Are
ground yourself enough to come on the line and not be like so spacey, you know?
totally, totally. And so like, yeah, it might still have a little bit more activation here,
Mhm.
right? And that's not a bad thing because that's the breath that you need in order to, do what you needed to do to like get this going. Probably you
Yeah.
need to be like have a bit more of a, um, like in a not fight or flight, not like this is end of the world sort of situation, but you need to be activated,
Yeah.
right?
That adrenaline going.
Exactly. And we need that, and stress is actually good for us. It's not a bad thing, but when we are in it a lot and we tend to be unaware of where we are, and we tend to be responding to so much stimulus in our lives that we can be in the activated breath a lot more than we realize. And what we want is a little bit more of a balance, right?
Mhm.
So the belly breathing is the idea that you might even have to force it at first. You're forcing the breath into the belly. And when you force that breath into the belly, it supports a relaxed response for you.
Mm.
And it might even feel a little uncomfortable at first, and that's okay, that's not bad, right? It might just take practice for you to get used to it in your body. Um, and also, one thing that I think about when I imagine a belly breath is like looking at like a cat on a windowsill breathing, like that big breath that they have, that big belly expansion,
Mhm.
right?
Yeah.
Because it's natural and they're not thinking about what their waist looks like when they're breathing,
Right,
right? They're
right.
naturally breathing are like a baby, like your baby.
Mhm.
I'm wondering if you see that like these big belly breaths.
Yes, I'm constantly observing her breathing and her belly breathing and, um,
Yeah.
when
So
it's
we kind of, yeah, so we kind of tend to like go up and start to breathe from here right now. And again, it's not bad. It's just having that balance is good. So
Mhm.
if you notice, like we could do 3 rounds of breath, trying to see if you can move your belly a little bit more when you're breathing. And we'll check in again. And then whoever is viewing this, I would encourage you to do it as well. And just, see for yourself what you notice,
Okay.
right? So putting your hand on your chest, your hand on your belly. And 2 more.
It reminds me of, because I'm a licensed massage therapist, and it reminds me of when I'm working on people's bodies. We first start off, having them take deep breaths in, the same kind
Mhm.
of method of, just relaxing their parasympathetic state. They're probably coming rushing or maybe just woke up, and to get on a table and be vulnerable, whatever the situation is, and just to be here now and take those breaths. And sometimes as the practitioner, I have my own stuff. So
Oh,
it's before and to be present with this kind of work, to be on a person. If you're thinking about something else, that intention is going to come onto the body. You know what I'm saying? And they notice it and they feel it. So it's so important for me to stay present and not drift away, in another land. But in these moments, like before we got on, it would have been so great to have that moment of, okay, breathe, and take those 3 deep breaths, but it's just being mindful and conscious, and to remember. My question I was going to ask you was, for people who have like surpassed that stage of I don't know but they're in panic mode. They're almost on the verge of a panic attack, and they're not mindful enough to be like self-care, how to ground myself. They're just in like a flight mode, or just to they're not conscious of how to come back. What do you recommend? Same technique. What do you recommend in those moments?
Yeah, so I work as a dialectical behavioral therapy practitioner,
Mm.
and it's a modality of therapy, and I love it because it's mindfulness based, and the interventions are, again, like things that are so damn practical, like are things that we could all use throughout our lives, and I'm gonna like refer to one of those skills.
Okay.
Um, and one of the um, ones that they use, they talk about as using these letters so that you can remember it. And the letters are spelled the word TIP, TIPP. And the first one I love because I use a lot, and it's been a major resource and tool for me in my life. And then I've seen it be really effective for clients. So using water, and particularly using cold temperature. So when we're super elevated like that, we're not, like you're saying, maybe you check in with yourself on a scale of 0 to 10 and you're at a 10, you're at a 9. It's hard to then go, okay, now I'm going to do like all of these cool tools and resources I've learned about. You need to just kind of bring yourself down so you could be at a decision-making mode, right? To do
Right.
that. So something you could use is like ice, or what I've used is just jumping in the shower. Like if I'm super panicked, I'll put myself in the shower and start warm, and then I'll go cold.
Mm.
So cold water has this way of actually, again, like regulating our systems.
Like shocking the parasympathetic state, or just shocking the nervous system?
It's like shocking the nervous system.
Okay.
And what it does is puts you into a more relaxed state. So you could use, like, I see a lot of adolescents in my practice, and they use this at school. They just go into, if they're panicking, which happens at school, their high schoolers have like so much pressure on them these days to
Oh, yeah.
perform, and so much social pressure with social media, etc. We've developed, and we'll talk about in the group, like just going to the bathroom and putting on the cold water and like putting it on your face or putting it on your wrists or like other areas or behind your neck, like areas that are vulnerable to temperature. If you're at home, you could jump in the shower and go cold. At the most extreme like level of this, I was feeling, so it can like help when you're really elevated, and it can help when you're feeling really down.
Mm.
And I've had this example in my work before, where I just had one of those days where I was feeling so overwhelmed, so sad, just, emotionally out of it, and I couldn't get out of bed. It was one of those days. Um, and what I ended up doing was, like, at the time I lived up in the mountains, and I found a lake. It was in August, and so I jumped into the water.
Oh my
It was
gosh.
freezing cold, right?
Whew.
And I cannot tell you how different I felt. I felt like someone, like I was a computer, and when like you reboot it and then everything starts functioning again.
While you were in the water, or when you came out?
Cut out. That's an extreme example, but like, if you want to do more hardcore and use like jump in the shower, if you just want to use ice, if you want to use like your sink, using water could be a super powerful tool, and it resets your system. Another one is always intense exercise. So that would be the I of this. You could do, I don't know about you, but like if I do burpees,
Mm.
like an exercise where you like jump up and down and do a push up, like that exhausts me after a few of those.
Yeah, that would be definitely. Every now and then I find myself doing like some squats, but I don't know if that's
Yeah. Yeah.
it's the same concept.
The same concept. Yeah. It doesn't matter what that exercise is. Anything that really is a little bit more intensive, like squats, that gets you out of your brain, out of your thinking, into your body, will de-escalate you, right?
Okay.
Another one is, you know, using different muscle groups of the body.
Mm-hmm.
You squeeze them, you release them.
Mm-hmm.
That's paired muscle relaxation.
So, for example,
So, for example, you might like something that wouldn't be visible to other people, if that's a concern. You could squeeze the muscles of your belly, like tighten your belly,
mm-hmm.
and then release. Then you might, like with your calves, you could like stretch your calves, like either way, with putting your foot up or extending down, stretch, and then release.
So would this be more so for muscle therapy for the parasympathetic state, or just a refocus of your mind?
It's actually for training your mind.
Okay.
And the idea is that when you are elevated, it might require a little bit more of an intensive intervention on your body to get your body to calm. So, and when you release, noticing the release, you might even say something like, relax, or I'm calm, or I'm okay. And that way it's like in yoga, at the very end, you practice savasana.
Mantras and
Yeah, it's kind of letting your body know, practicing like, okay, I'm going to move into a relaxation state.
Mm-hmm.
And kind of forcing a more stressed state, but controlling it. You're in control of it.
Mm-hmm.
And then forcing a relaxation, allowing a relaxation. And then lastly, extending the out breath is super, super powerful. It's very similar to belly breathing. You might do it naturally in belly breathing, but that would be as simple as counting out to the count of 7, counting in to the count of 5. And that's another way. It relaxes your nervous system. And honestly, that's my favorite of my clients. Because again, it's something that you could do anywhere, anytime. It's super easy to do before bed. It's super easy if you're driving, any sort of situation that might, be more intensive and you need your calm.
Super helpful. I definitely, I think we all could benefit. We all have pressures and we all have stresses and that are taxing on our emotional and mental and spiritual bodies. And some moments in some areas there's just more pressure, and having different tools and resources that you have access to, your memory has access to pull them out. And maybe this one doesn't work right now, and so let's try something else for this individual. You know what I'm saying? These are all really helpful.
Great. Yeah, and then there's so many, like you're saying, it's finding the one that makes sense for you, finding the one that you might try something and go, oh, okay, like I can actually imagine myself using this.
Yeah. Those are awesome. Trying to think. So those tools you were able to provide us with, and hopefully some people can benefit from that in this time and use some of those. Is there anything else you wanted to share personally on your experience with using these tools, or not speaking directly on your clientele, but just anything that you've experienced that people could relate to?
Yeah, it's a good question. Yeah, I think, again, I'm seeing like things amplify, but I'm also seeing like none of the regular stressors are going away,
Mm-hmm.
So that's all for us to deal with. I've been thinking about, there's a really great psychotherapist, Esther Perel.
Mm-hmm.
She's like very mainstream now. She's got many books out. And one of the things I read from her recently was, the kind of like the importance in the art of complaining. Like there's a lot to do right now that we can like try to rise above, or to make the most of the situation, or to like, to do the best we can with the situation. But it's also like just being human, allowing ourselves to be human, allowing ourselves to have the emotions that we're having, and extending that often to ourselves is the hardest.
Yes.
Right? So, yeah, I think about in my work, I do a lot of listening, you know, and I notice when people are really listening to me, really just letting me have talk about my experience, talk about my stress. It's so helpful.
Oh,
So
yeah.
helpful when people aren't trying to fix it or like fix me.
Mm-hmm.
But they can just let me be human, accept where I'm at. And then extending that to ourselves is another topic. But I think also that's probably at the heart of what I think is, on my mind and my heart.
Mm-hmm. That's beautiful. It's an interesting perspective as well.
A lot of research out there that
Okay.
explains to us like how important gratitude is, and it makes sense. Like when we practice it, it's like the belly breathing. You feel it right away. You know it's good for you.
Mm-hmm.
But now, like they're noticing, like if you pair gratitude practices, or not just kind of do it like, okay, I'm gonna I should be grateful for this, or I'm gonna make a list of things to be grateful for because that's what I read in some magazine, the health magazine, that told me to do that, right?
Yeah.
Um, but one of the things that a colleague of mine um, brought up was this exercise of gratitude in a story. And I loved it because it engages you. It engages you. And in a way, it's another level of mindfulness practice that actually really encourages you to be there for the gratitude, and it makes it personal. Um, and so doing that like on a regular basis, maybe even on a daily basis, of thinking about something that you're grateful for, and thinking about your why, thinking about how that's personal for you, your story around it.
Mm-hmm.
Um, an example that I can think of is I'm looking at a lot of beautiful plants in my space right now,
Mm-hmm.
and beautiful plants all throughout my apartment. And I love plants and I love having them, and it's wonderful in itself. But also, it's something that uh, my partner does. He loves plants. He has a green thumb, and he just makes this beautiful arrangement in our apartment. And so when I see it, I don't just think about like I'm enjoying this plant, but I also like see him,
Mm-hmm.
and I see like this gift of something that he's offering, and like um, some way that he's kind of taking care of us every day and kind of taking care of our health.
That's beautiful. And just to have that feeling of aliveness and breathing. Plants make me think of those things as well, like growing, and I like how you relate it to your partner and him.
Thanks.
That's essential. Well,
And yeah, you asked too, like, what was on my mind in this situation.
mm,
And I know that you also like, this is your platform, this is your, was your idea to host this. And I know, of course, this is what's happening for everybody right now, but I wondered if there was anything for you in particular, that was up
that's
around.
that's definitely a good question. A lot of times when people are exposing their or into their purpose, in their purpose, or
Hmm.
expressing it, it has a lot to do in reflection of their story and their authentic story, and why they're in their purpose, what I'm saying, or their mission. And
Mm-hmm.
I think that's a good observation, and thanks for asking.
Yeah.
But I guess to answer your question on how is my mental emotional health, or what just kind of brings this topic up.
Yeah. What brings you to do this,
Um, it's a good question. I don't know. I just feel like, as I can feel everybody in this time. I mean, obviously not everybody, but just from what my association on social media, we all are dealing with normal day-to-day life struggles and money struggles, but specifically in this time, I'm hearing people talk more about, like suicide and domestic disputes and things like that are just more in heightened than the day-to-day life. These things do happen, but I'm hearing of a lot of these stories. And obviously this is not my scope to deal and intervene with people struggling with these issues, you know but I feel like if there's some way that I can assist in on my platform and bring people together and help each other and share resources and tools, because I think there's a lot of tools and modalities out there that are one and the same. They're just used differently, in different environments, and just giving people that access and exposure is really important. And I feel like it's a service thing that I can do, even if I'm dealing with so many things on my plate, whether it's mental or emotional. I'm going through a transition. What can I do if I can't help the next person directly? What can I do indirectly? And maybe if it so happens to help me too, that's great too. I think we all assist and heal each other as some sort of collective, by servicing each other and healing ourselves so we can heal each other and teach people how to heal themselves, versus being called that healer, So yeah, I think that was kind of my initiative on this season is about spirituality of the podcast, and spirituality goes into a lot of things, from the food we eat to our mental practices, our spiritual practice. It's so widespread. And so I think in this time in quarantine, we are forced to slow down. And I think that was one of my questions. After I answer your question, I'll get to. We are forced to kind of slow down and look at things and reflect on things. And part of that is a form of spirituality, is slowing down and tuning in. But then at the same time, some people really don't have that luxury to do that right now. And so how can those people, still get that indirect benefit from the people who are able to slow down and look at things and ground themselves? How can they share their resources? You know what I'm saying? What are they doing, even though they're in different environments? You know what I'm saying? But just to help in any way, because yeah, that slowing down is important. It's that parasympathetic state. But some people are they're essential workers in their jobs, and they're in hostile home environments, so it's like, it's that slowdown is not, they're not even experiencing quarantine. You know what I'm saying?
Well, and they can, and I think in those situations, it's like how you can't imagine doing something for yourself like that at that point. Because in crisis mode, it's hard to think like, oh yeah, I'm going to take a moment to calm my nervous system. We don't feel like that's valuable, or that might even feel safe for us to do.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I think you brought up so many interesting, things by bringing up that, explaining why you're doing this. I think you're doing this as in some ways you're modeling kind of what you're talking about, which is like, if you have the resources to support others who may not, you can check in and wonder, like, what other ways can I reach out to those people, right? Like if you're seeing people hurting in those ways, right? Like it's good for our mental health to be supportive to our community members, right? And of course, like, it goes full circle. For people who don't have like the ability to be sitting at home for hours, not having, you know, having like quarantine time where we don't have much to do. For those who are busy, I would still say some of those same things of like coming back to yourself, checking in with yourself, taking the breath. And the reason why is because those are the same interventions that that are suggested and offered to people who are on the front lines.
Mm-hmm.
Anyone who has to like make decisions, like in those difficult moments, just taking a few moments to relax your nervous system is your ally, so that you can make better decisions for yourself, and for your loved ones in those situations, like domestic violence situations.
Mm-hmm.
I also think going back to just being there for those who you can be there for, like checking in with your bandwidth of how many people you can connect with, and you can't take on the world, right? But you were saying like people who are going through these things, like just reaching out to those people, taking care of yourself so you can reach out to those people.
Mm-hmm.
Trying to point out resources,
Yeah.
for people in those situations. Not letting people know that they're not alone is a big, big deal. Is a big deal. And, you talked about suicidal rates and depression going up. A big reason that we know this would happen, and like immediately when those stay-at-home orders were passed, people who work with mental health, and probably a lot of people in the health field, like, that this is going to happen. This, because we are social creatures. We do depend on one another for all sorts of needs. And so whatever ways that we can let people know and help them, like, not isolate, I think is really, really important at this time.
Yeah, I definitely agree. And so that was my idea for doing this, just to be a collective. I think it's, you see people coming together, and then some people want to isolate, and just kind of seeing your part in the midst of all this, seeing your part, seeing your position, seeing what you can do, what you're supposed to. I think it's different for everybody. Everyone's energy is different. So, but yeah,
And also, I think about, there's that we lost connection with others, which is a big deal and a big impact on suicidal rates and depression that you brought up. Another thing is losing a sense of purpose, or us not, having the situation and not knowing like what, not feeling like we have an understanding of why this is happening or how we're going to get through it. That leads to those things,
the
right?
uncertainty, of fear, and which brings anxiety. It makes me, what you're saying makes me think of it's kind of sometimes it's a mindset. It's choosing to see the opportunity in this type of challenge, or sitting in the reality of it and all that comes with it, and experiencing everything change, and maybe losing your job or not working, and like you said, and losing that sense of purpose, and it's like taking that left or right decision into how to overcome these thoughts that that shadow work that we all are dealing with, from every area, from relationships to career, and choosing to say, all right, maybe I'm a little lost and not guided in this moment. I don't know what's going on. And that naturally brings up emotions of fear and anxiety and anxiousness. But I can use this as an opportunity to reflect more on my purpose, and which which way I want to go, and instead of thinking maybe, I'm stuck, I don't know what's going to go on, and that frantic, state of mind that our thoughts can lead us
Right.
to that other side of, how am I going to do this? Why is this happening? And I feel so lost, and in that almost like a victim mentality, and just kind of making, I don't know, it seems like we can always go in one direction and take one path with our mental, and that's where that mental struggle, leads to, which impacts our emotional body,
Yeah.
naturally. But and I'm sensing more, I'm hearing, and I'm associated with people on struggling with, moments of suicide, and just a lot of pressure from
Yeah.
their mental thoughts and their mental struggles, from previous, like you said at the beginning of this conversation, from previous life situations, and now it's maybe more and heightened because we are in isolation and we are forced to sit and look at ourselves. Not everybody. you,
Yeah, severe lack of resources sometimes, or like complete upheaval of our lives.
yeah, yeah. So in those moments, when people are having that mental struggle, that mental battle of wanting to stay positive and wanting to go right, in the right direction of our thoughts, but we have those triggers coming up inside us. How do you suggest, I was thinking about this the other day, how do you suggest people fighting those negative thoughts and dealing with their shadow work and healing, you know, in I mean, you gave us a lot of resources and tools to deal with the breath work and getting less water, but on a mental level, shifting their perspectives and their thoughts,
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. You know, like that sense of purpose, I think, right? Like that was the other thing.
Mhm.
Like, yeah, we're losing community, then we're also maybe like having a total shift in identity and sense of purpose. So trying to find ways that you can see yourself forwarding yourself, like how can I see that I can get through this another side? How can I like use this moment, to get through this, to like, actually overcome, so there's different types of stress, for instance, right? So there's like acute stress would be like an example of like a car crash or something like that,
Mhm.
a big event,
Mhm.
um, or one event that creates, stress. Cumulative is something more like what we're experiencing COVID. Now we might experience acute stresses along the way, but just this situation in general is creating cumulative stress, meaning like there's little stressors that are building up all the time, right?
Mhm.
Another type of stress is eustress. So, EU stress essentially. And that is acknowledging that there are stressors that, when things come into our lives, that we can take the situation, we can manage the challenge, and that we can actually grow from it.
Mhm.
And for people who acknowledge or try to find meaning and some sort of purpose in what they're doing, even if that's one thing a day.
Mhm.
So that's what I would like parse it down to,
Yeah.
make it more simple. Yes, you could, if you find a greater sense of purpose for yourself in this time, wonderful. If that's hard for you to go, okay, I don't know how to like, how to find something for me that's meaningful, in a bigger way, it's just like one thing in the day. So setting an intention for yourself for the day, setting a meaningful intention for yourself, is enough to kind of, it shows us to really help people through the worst of crises, and actually helps with rates of survival for these sort of moments.
Definitely.
So, and again, that's it's so unique, it's so personal for each one of us, and I see, like, and it's so interesting too, in this offering, it's all connected, right? Like,
Mhm.
you're doing this offering that probably gives you a big sense of, it gives you a sense of purpose, gives you, like, meaning throughout the day. The
Mhm.
work that I do, it's like a helping profession. It totally helps
Mhm.
me go through the day. It's totally helping me, you
Yeah.
know. Um, so, and I've seen my clients, like, shift to, making masks for people. I see people um, connecting more with their families and realizing that, I need to be there for my family members in ways that I haven't done before, and
Mhm.
finding meaning and purpose there, you know. Maybe doing that essential job that is really, it is, it's hard, and it's pulling from us, and it's putting us at risk. And yet, like, I see people doing that for supporting their family, and that, like, gets them through the day.
Yeah. This is true. This is true. Finding that sense of purpose, that's something to definitely keep in mind when going through those mental struggles, to just how to keep moving forward.
Right, right. And if it's okay if it's a step at a time in the beginning.
Yeah.
Like, when you start doing any activity, that's the hardest part. And literally, our whole systems, including our brains, like, start to propel us forward. Like, neurons are firing in our brain when we start an activity to propel us forward, to keep going. So acknowledging, like, okay, I might not feel like I'm doing this, but maybe I create a start time and I do this one thing in the day at 2 o'clock or something like that. Um, and I would even suggest that for, like, self-care practices for people who don't are like, just, have a lot to do in their day and don't have a lot of time for themselves.
In those moments of transition, when you've been um you've been this person, and you've had this one mission and sense of purpose for years, and then maybe something shifted, whether a life event or a thought, or someone said something and something shifted within you, or you experienced something, you got to dabble in this and experience that, and you're starting to think about maybe not necessarily a new purpose, but another purpose and another mission. And there's this gray area of unhappiness,
Mhm.
but growth, wanting to grow, and then that stagnancy of, making that decision but not knowing how, and then the fear that comes with that. Would you say that's the gray area that, like, people kind of get? Maybe, I mean, it's not to generalize. I think it's different for everybody, but what am I saying? Just
Yeah, that it's hard area. It's a really hard area. It's a scary area. And yet, like, there's something there, I think, that you're pointing to.
yeah, the
Yeah.
transition state of having purpose and still figuring out um, a simultaneous purpose, in how to direct that and go with that and flow with that. And as we continue to grow and evolve and learn ourselves, at different places, that could happen, of having some people just have straight, they know what they're going to do their whole life, and they take the steps. But there's a lot of us
Yeah.
who we find new purposes, we find new missions,
Hmm.
and you know and having to just that transitional state, which I think not necessarily in this period of time, but some people could be experiencing that transition, that gray area. We talked about uncertainty, but that sense of purpose, helps them move forward. But what if, speaking hypothetically, what if this is a time where, you know,
We
that
are in a transitional space for sure. Like, whether that's crisis for us, whether that's, like, there's deadness or not a lot going on in our lives, whatever's going on, this is a transitional space. We're not going to be in a COVID situation forever. And we're literally, as as a planet, all facing a transition together. That's that's a powerful moment,
Mm.
and transitions are so hard, so hard, so hard to tolerate, so scary. Um,
And to navigate.
so yeah, and what does this mean? And who do I am? And all of our doubts and everything comes up to the surface. And actually, like that, in my role, like I recognize that because that's when people come to therapy often.
Mm-hmm.
It doesn't matter what the transitional space is. That's when they're like, this is too hard to fucking tolerate on my own. So I'm sorry,
Right.
watch it.
Right.
And
Someone solve my problems. tell me, tell me
like,
how
I
my
can't, this is too, yeah, this is scary. This is so scary. Um, so just that, whatever that transition space looks like, again, is like so hard that that's a reason that people don't often come to therapy because things are easy, right? They come because they really are, they're suffering.
Mm-hmm.
And so yeah, I also like because of my work, I recognize that because I can sit back. It's not my transition. I try to practice this as much as I can with myself, but it's easier in my role with others because it's not my story. It's not
Right.
my experience to recognize that this is a moment, and oftentimes it's a really, really valuable moment.
Mm-hmm.
This is a moment when yeah, it's like it's going into something, and it's a new birth of something. And transitions are so hard that in a lot of religions, you could see a way, some sort of modeling or some sort of teachings around how to manage transitions. One of the big ways this is seen is like in the idea of um, the transition from life to death. You see that in Catholicism. It's this idea of like there's a transitional space. Like in Tibetan religion, there's like what they call bardo. And so I think there's a good reason that it's reflected in most cultures, is because there's you know it's a difficult time, and really like these little ways that we, in big ways like a pandemic, that we do it throughout our lives, it is kind of a reflection of a death, and a new life.
A rebirth. A
I
death
mean,
and
yeah,
rebirth.
exactly.
They're,
Exactly.
they're both such powerful moments of the self, and I totally agree. They both have their value in them, um, to keep evolving. There's certain parts of it that need to die, certain structures, certain situations, so that there can be a rebirth.
Right.
you know but
Right.
that person that did exist was still valuable, of course, in those
Right.
thoughts.
And is actually totally connected to the person who's in this new
Yeah.
phase, this
Oh,
new
definitely.
chapter. you know
Definitely.
and I think that like I named my psychotherapy practice Define Your Duende.
I like that.
And,
Yeah.
yeah, and duende is this word that means like, kind of like your life force. Um, and the reason I did that was because I found that
What language is that in?
in
Duende?
Spanish.
Oh, okay.
Uh-huh.
That sounds Spanish.
Duende has like lots of different meanings. Like in some of the mythology, it was like this idea of like an elf or like a fairy or something like that. In that time too, like, creativity, and like you weren't given so much credit for like your accomplishments. Like the accomplishments of an artist, for instance, was like given to like mythical creatures, or like explored and explained in different ways, or to like religious figures. And duende was like one of those examples, and it's evolved over time. And one of the ways it's evolved is in Spanish culture, and Spain in particular, um, was this idea that to describe someone who had like, there's just something different about them. They like, they did things in a really, like, I would think. So I've been watching The Last Dance. I don't know if you know that show.
No, I'm so not a show person, but like every now and then I get like every couple of years like binge states of
Okay. Well, I grew up outside of Chicago and grew up around the era of Michael Jordan.
Mm.
And like, Michael Jordan and the way that he played basketball would be an example of like duende. Like he wasn't just playing basketball. He was like, he had something where he's like really fully living into it,
Yeah, yeah.
So, and that could be,
I feel the same way, not to get off, with Kobe,
yeah.
like different eras.
That was Kobe.
They made that, when the word that you're describing, they made what they do just their niche, and transformed it.
Totally. So, I named my practice that because, it's like, it doesn't matter what we're doing, just like fully being there in what we're doing.
Mm-hmm.
Whether it's my practice as a therapist or, you being a mother and like providing mindfulness, interventions that you're doing for your community and here, people acknowledge or feel when you're like living into something that you really care about, that you're really connected to.
Oh, definitely. It's felt.
Right. And that's going to be like changing and evolving throughout your life, as you're saying. And so the reason I have that name of the practice is because I really believe in letting yourself define that and redefine that throughout your life as a big part of like a mental health practice.
I like how I love how you went to another language to find meaning and express meaning in that, in your brand, in the expression of your brand, because when people love to search for meaning, and it's like a double conundrum, like finding your meaning, and then there's another language. We're all searching for languages and learning different languages and how to relate. There's English, but not everyone, why is that the language everyone comes to try to communicate, when there's so many other beautiful common languages? Not to go completely off guard, but the nonprofit I started is it's called Akash, and it's a Sanskrit word, meaning to transcend in the sky. And so, and I've been a language nerd all my life, so I that pulls to me. I love when people are able to express meaning through other words, and because maybe that word, we in English, we say, bigger meaning, and then when you express it into Spanish, that word could hit so differently on someone's heart. My experience from that was when I was learning Arabic, the words and the translation from English to Arabic, the meaning is, the words, what we say in English is so poetic in Arabic, so I went off on a tangent with that, but I really love, I love how you did that and are trying to find that way to reach to people.
I really appreciate that.
Yeah. When you say it like that. No, but I really do. I do like that.
No, I do. And I think that's something that I loved about your work. And I've also been really drawn to what you're doing and about your openness about like, and during this time, like with COVID, I think it ties back of this is, we're not that separate, and we have the same basic needs. And, a lot of us are going through similar things at this time. It is a good time to like think about ourselves out of our little, our little view of the world. Yeah. I love your tangents, because that makes, it does, it like makes this a podcast versus like a lecture. You know what I mean?
That's true. An interview, lecture. If you want, we can kind of transition to live just for a couple of minutes and just kind of resurface, touch base. What is the word I'm looking for? Just kind of repeat with some of what we've been saying. This is for the podcast. This is the recorded Zoom interview, so we can try to reach out to another live platform if you want to.
Cool. Let's do it.
Okay. Just jump on the live story and I'll see you there.